So that Lost Ark is a bit popular, innit? We here at Rock Paper Shotgun have been playing it pretty much non-stop since its Western launch last week, primarily spending our time experimenting with the game's impressive roster of 15 playable classes. Listen, we get it, 15 class types is an overwhelming amount of classes to choose from, but don't worry. I've sat down with Guides writer Rebecca to have a chat about which are the best, and, for the sake of balance and content, the worst classes in Lost Ark. Whether you're brand new to the game or just trying to decide which class to pick as your alt, this video is for you. Anyway, enough waffling, let's get started. So Rebecca, you've been playing a hell of a lot of Lost Ark and you've been writing our guides over on the site, so I thought you were best placed to have a chat to about the best and worst classes available in Lost Ark at the current point in time. So I thought we'd start off with the good classes, and we'd start off with one that we've both really been enjoying playing, the Gunslinger. That's the female gunner class, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So why would you recommend people pick the Gunslinger class when they're new to Lost Ark?
So when you start Lost Ark, it's all PvE for quite a while before you get to the end game, and that's when sort of more PvP options and things open up. But for PvE, the Gunslinger is just one of the best DPS classes going. She's so fast. She's one of the fastest characters in the game, and she's got an amazing crit buff as well. She's a really solid choice whether you're playing solo or with friends, because her crit buff means that she's pretty sturdy if you decide to go it alone in the world of Lost Ark, and she's also, her crit buff applies to the entire party if you're grouped up, which is just really nice. Helps your friends out, you know. Everyone loves a good crit, so your friends will thank you, I think, if you're playing Gunslinger.
What I really loved about the Gunslinger is the variety of weapons that she has available. So the fact that you're able to swap between her dual pistols and her shotgun and her rifle, and also just the way that all of those guns can be paired together into like this one massive devastating combo. I don't think I've played an MMO before where, and I think a lot of the classes that we'll talk about today fall into this same kind of category. You come out of the gate feeling super powerful. The first, troll enemies that you fight in that prologue, you're able to just mince them immediately with all of her amazing abilities, and I just think that out of all of the ones that we'll discuss today, she always feels like the most dynamic and the most powerful to me.
Oh, indeed. I mean, how often, for one thing, how often do you get to play with an arsenal of guns in an MMO? I mean, it's a very fantasy-heavy genre. If you get guns, it's generally just the one thing. So to be given these three guns and the freedom to switch between them sort of at your own pace, because there's other classes in this game that have multiple weapons, and I found the switching a bit less intuitive. Whereas because you've got this huge collection of guns as your identity skill, you can just pick what you want and kind of go with it. And that's really, really nice. I'm not always a big gun person. I actually tend to prefer more melee combat, but yeah, I was just really impressed with, you can sort of zoom around feeling like Lara Croft with the dual pistols and then switch to something a bit more meaty for a specific attack. So yeah, that's very cool.
I hadn't even considered the Lara Croft comparison, but you are right, actually. You do feel like an old-timey fantasy Lara Croft.
You do. I'm never more than about 3 seconds away from a Tomb Raider comparison, so it made me very happy when I realised that I could low-key RP Lara Croft in this game. Well,
let's see if we can slip a Lara Croft comparison into the rest of the people that we talk about in this video.
The reason that the Paladin is like Lara Croft, you might be interested to know. No. No, I don't think you can get away with that one. The reason that falls down is because Lara Croft would never try to help a teammate. She wouldn't be in a support role. You wouldn't find her doing that.
That's a very good point. She's the opposite of a support role, really, isn't she? Just as a character.
Indeed. Oh, I love my old selfish sociopathic 1990s Lara.
God bless her. Drinking Lucozade and destroying World Heritage sites. That's my Lara. So moving on to the next of our favourite classes on this list, we have the Paladin. Now, I haven't actually played as the Paladin yet, but you seem to have really enjoyed what you've played of them so far.
So, yeah, support classes in Lost Ark are in weirdly short supply, given that this is a game that's shipped with 15 character classes, and it's an MMO, and it's sort of around party building to an extent. The fact that you've only really got the Bard and the Paladin is kind of unusual, and it means that both of those classes are in really high demand for team-ups. A lot of people, the Bard has better base stats for what she's doing as a support character, but for me, there's something about the Paladin, the fact that you can kind of mix sub-DPS and support activities. For me, it slightly edges it out overall. So yeah, in terms of base class, I think the Warrior class is it comes out pretty strongly. I mean, when you look at our full tier list on the website, certainly for PvE, all 3 warrior types are in the top tier, in the S tier. And that's because there's a really good base of attack and defense stats for that whole base class. Which means that the Paladin, unlike the Bard, is kind of able to take a bit more of an active role in attack as well, which, I mean, full disclosure here, I actually quite enjoy playing a bit of a tank. So yeah, for the Paladin isn't quite in the Bard's league for healing and shields, but he does have that ability to switch between the 2 sort of roles that he can play. And the thing that I really liked was all of his skills are colour-coded, so you can quite easily look down his skill tree and see you're going sort of more yellow for support or more blue for sub-DPS, or you can do a little bit of both. And I enjoy playing a mixed role, especially when you've got someone as, as buff as a warrior character, and it's kind of a waste to never use them for anything offensive like that. And also he's got this kind of, I mean, people who are familiar with sort of D&D will probably know a little bit about the Paladin's deal, and I like that they've leaned into it so hard in Lost Ark, and everything he does is holy. His sword, his holy sword of holy light, holy smiting the unholy enemies of Lost Ark. And it's like, yeah, it's just...
That's incredible, yeah.
Just get your sword out, whack them with your sword, and then a beam of godly light hits them and hurts them again.
Lovely. And what a wonderful way of spending an evening, right? I do like how, and I always think some of the best support classes are ones that can flip between, allowing you to do damage yourself and also supporting your teammates. And it sounds like they've really nailed that balance with the Paladin.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's not to say anything against the Bard. That class has also got some really good stuff going for it, as we say, like stronger support and some fun, unique things to do with the actual music that she plays. But yeah, for me, it's got to be the Paladin if you're playing support.
So moving on to another warrior class, this time I've got the Berserker.
Yeah, that's correct. He's probably, I would say, one of the biggest tanks in the game, which is great for me because I love playing a tanky character, particularly if I'm new to a game and I don't know what I'm going to face. Like, having just someone who basically nothing can touch them is a really reassuring feeling. So the Berserker is a really good choice. I think if you come to Lost Ark completely without an idea of what else you want to do, that's a great choice for your first character.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the main thing I could probably say against the Berserker is that it's potentially a little bit boring. There's not too much to surprise you in what his build can do, but I mean, it is a classic for a reason to sort of go in and tank with huge damage and huge defenses and just, smack away at everything and explore the world without worrying too much about what it's going to do to you.
Would you say that you'd recommend the Berserker for maybe returning MMO players who are looking for something nice and comfortable, something familiar?
I think definitely if it's familiarity that you're after, the Berserker is a good starting choice. But if you consider yourself quite familiar with MMOs and you're looking for something a bit more unique that demonstrates what Lost Ark does that other MMOs don't do, probably less of a recommendation from me.
You need Western Lara Croft for that, I think, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I've never seen the light before.
So moving on to the 2 classes that we'd probably recommend people try and avoid in PvE. The first one we have here is another gunner class, this time the male gunner, and it's the Deadeye. So why should people avoid this class?
Oh, poor old Deadeye. I do feel bad for this guy because do you remember when, again, the Tomb Raider comparison, they brought in a male counterpart for Lara Croft in one of the games, and you're just left feeling, okay, so this is the same character but not as good.
Yeah.
This is almost exactly what happens with the Deadeye and the Gunslinger. I mean, I liked male Tomb Raider, but he wasn't as good to play, let's be real. Yeah, he also has the sort of the 3-gun loadout. He has the crit buff for 10%, but he's just not quite as... He doesn't deal quite as much damage, his HP is a bit lower, his defense just isn't quite as good, and frankly, if you're gonna choose to play him, unless you have a specific character that you want to roleplay and it has to be on a male build, just pick the Gunslinger. She does everything the same but better. The Deadeye does perform a lot better in PvP for reasons that we'll go into, I guess, if we do a PvP version of this, but yeah, for PvE, he really does probably rank bottom of the list.
You said in your guide that he was the fiddliest class to get to grips with mechanically, which to be honest, I mean, every class in Lost Ark has a lot to learn. So what makes him fiddlier than the other ones?
It's just the need to position him so perfectly to get the right shot off. I mean, a 10% crit buff is great, but if you have to pixel hunt essentially for it, then it's not that it's impossible to play as him, but it's just a little less satisfying and intuitive than a lot of the other classes.
That sounds really annoying considering how fast the enemies can be and how they move in packs. So I can imagine, I mean, sometimes I miss my shots as the Gunslinger. I might be trying to line up one of her abilities and the enemy just runs past it before I can execute it. So yeah. I can imagine having to line up all of his shots perfectly it doesn't sound like a good time to me.
As best I can tell, sort of comparing them, there is a little more forgiveness in the Gunslinger than the Deadeye in terms of having to line up those shots. So again, it just feeds into that idea of pick the Gunslinger. She does it better in PvE at least.
If you're learning one thing from this video, everyone watching, it's the Gunslinger is the best class.
The Gunslinger is very, very good.
And our final class on this list, another one that we think you should avoid, is the Wardancer, which is a female martial artist class, I think.
Indeed, yeah. And I feel really sad for the Wardancer because there's a lot of potential for her to get better over time if they make some changes to her. But the real issue that I had with the Wardancer, and the reason I can't really overly recommend her as a character, is because she's not really suitable to be a support character, but she's not really suitable to DPS or sub DPS either. She's got really, really good buffs, and like some people might say I've been a bit harsh putting her in our C tier because her buffs are great. She does good things for her team. So yeah, she does a lot of good passive buffs. She boosts the attack speed and the crit chance of the entire team. But the problem in terms of playing her is that she's just not that fun to play. You find yourself passively buffing the rest of the team, but her damage is so low that everyone else is just torn through enemies before you can really get to them.
Ah, right.
Yeah, the only real downside to her buffs is that they have quite a long cooldown period, so in addition to that time you spend sort of like watching your friends make mincemeat out of everything around you, the other half of your time is just waiting for the cooldown to end so you can do it again. So it's just a frustrating class to play overall.
Yeah.
And her damage is low and she doesn't have much innate healing or shield, so there's not even that room for that sort of support role where she can be a bit of a healer and a bit of a shield character. She is combat buffs all the way, but then not very effective in combat herself, and it's kind of like a sad situation for her. I identify too much with fictional characters, and I'm just feeling really sorry for this lady who kind of dances around doing like cool martial arts moves on the edges, but can't really get involved much herself. Part of me does hope that if they overhaul any character classes from these 15, that it is the Wardancer.
Yeah.
Just because I feel like there's a lot of potential there, but I mean, there's no Lost Ark classes that are unplayable. I mean, it's a well-designed game in that you can play the entire game with any character. That's the whole point. But as the Wardancer, especially, I think in a group, it gets a little frustrating.
I do agree. I think considering there are 15 classes to choose from, and I really do want to let everyone know as well that we're talking about the best and the very worst. There's still a lot of characters in between these groups that we're discussing that are absolutely worth checking out and you'll probably get a lot out of. But it is interesting that considering they've nailed it with so many, this one does sound like it's fine. It's not bad necessarily, but it does sound like its biggest crime is it's a boring class to pick because you're almost helping your friends have a better time, whereas you don't really do much, which isn't... Does anyone really want to play that in a video game?
Poor old Wardancer is the designated driver, I feel, of the Lost Ark party composition.
Well, we've learned a lot of lessons today, Rebecca, and I think we can all come away from this video as better human beings and having made better choices in the video game Lost Ark.
All right, well, thank you for having me. It's been fun to chat.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining us. We'll definitely get you back on. If you want to read more of Rebecca's great words about Lost Ark, make sure to check out all of her guides over on the Rock Paper Shotgun website. Thank you very much for watching. I'll be back very soon. It's goodbye from me and goodbye from Rebecca.
Bye.